My advice to any law student or new lawyer or old lawyer, I don't care, if you're practicing law, you need to read all the time. You need to read as much as you possibly can because, and I don't really care what you read. You know, you can read Stephen King or Tom Clancy or self-help books. It doesn't matter.
Hello everyone and welcome to the Student Lawyer podcast series. Whether you're at school, sixth form, university, thinking about a career in law or exploring law careers, you're in the right place. We are the one-stop shop for student lawyers. If you'd like to join the Student Lawyer as a writer, please email hello@thestudentlawyer.com. This episode is sponsored by the University of Law. The University of Law offers a range of undergraduate and postgraduate courses and master's degrees alongside an award-winning pro bono clinic so you can build up your legal experience while studying. And their experienced career service will enable you to put your best foot forward when launching your legal career. The courses are employment focused and based on real legal practice so you'll be better prepared for the workplace. Part-time and online study options are available so you can work and study at the same time. Click the link in the description box of the podcast to find out more about the courses on offer. Hello everyone, welcome to the Student Lawyer podcast. My name is Stephanie. I'm a current law student, future trainee solicitor and the host of today's episode. Joining me today is Michael Chastaine, award-winning criminal defense attorney, speaker and author. Michael is also the founder of Chastaine Jone's attorney's office based in Sacramento and joins us today from his home in New Mexico. During the episode, Michael explains the importance of storytelling as a legal professional, provides top tips on how to become an award-winning lawyer, explains why law firms best operate as a business, and gives advice on how to have a healthy work-life balance. Michael, welcome to the Student Lawyer podcast. It's just wonderful to have you here with us today.
Well, I'm very pleased to be here.
So I just wanted, before we crack on, to let the listeners know that we have got Michael Chastaine joining us from New Mexico today. So it's morning where Michael is. So I'm hoping that he's got a cup of coffee or something with him. I've got a cup of tea, traditional, I suppose, for London. So welcome to the Student Lawyer podcast, Michael.
Thank you very much. I'm very much looking forward to this.
Excellent. So I thought that we could kick off the interview by asking you to introduce yourself and your career history to date, please.
Sure. So my name is Mike Chastaine. I have been a lawyer for 37 years. I graduated from Santa Clara University back in 1985. Immediately went into the public defender's office in Santa Clara County, which is in San Jose, California. And stayed there almost 17 years. That was during the big .com boom and the Bay Area kind of was going crazy. So we moved, my family and I moved to the Sacramento area. I joined a firm there, stayed for about 6 years, all doing criminal defense. And then in 2007, opened my own firm and owned that until the beginning of this year or the end of last year, in which I sold it and have remained of counsel to the firm and mostly doing business development kind of things for the firm. But I moved out to New Mexico, Santa Fe, New Mexico, and that's where I've been living pretty much full time since about September.
Wow, that's so interesting. What an incredible career journey that you have. So what were the main reasons that you did choose to pursue a career as a criminal defense attorney?
Well, so, back in the 80s, things were a lot different than they are now as far as expenses. College was very, very cheap. Law school really didn't cost very much. I thought it did, but, in hindsight, it didn't. I originally had worked for a personal injury firm, and that's what I wanted to pursue. But I also knew that to be a top-notch personal injury lawyer, you needed some trial experience. And the quickest way to get that would be either go to the district attorney or the public defender. I wasn't really cut out to be a district attorney. So I got a job in the public defender's office, had great mentors there, some of the best lawyers that I've ever met, and did a ton of trial work. I did 12 trials in my first year, got to do death penalty cases by the time I was 30. So, I really moved up through the ranks. I had a lot of success. And once I started doing the criminal work, I realized that really was my calling. And so that's, all I've really done, for the entire 37 years. I've dabbled in a couple other areas, but, 99% of my practice has been criminal defense for the entire time.
Wow. You mentioned that you had mentors there. And I mean, I have had, I'm a career changer, and I've had fantastic mentors in the past. And I've had some people that are around me that have perhaps not been as supportive. And I've really seen the difference in my ability in these different things that I've done, grown with the nurture of people. And as you mentioned that you have benefited from mentors in the past, how do you get the most out of them, would you say?
Well, the simple answer is keep your mouth shut and listen. Although, it is important to ask questions, but the most important thing is to just listen and recognize that you're going to have your own style. You're going to have your own way of doing things. So you don't want to duplicate what someone else does, but you want to integrate it into, your style and what works best for you. I had lots of different mentors that I worked with, and I often say that there's some people who I worked with who I didn't like and didn't have my best interest at heart, but I learned a lot from them. So you can learn a lot. Virtually anybody can be a mentor to you. And that includes books. Abraham Lincoln was a mentor of mine. I read, his stories. Many authors. I read a ton, and you see behind me, that's just a small fraction of my collection of books. But every one of those that I've read, is a mentor. I've learned something, and really that's what it means. Is be open to learning from someone other than yourself. The biggest mistake a new lawyer can make is think that they know anything, because law school simply gives you the right to practice law. It doesn't teach you how to practice law.
Well, thank you for sharing that. I think it's such a great piece of advice, and one that is really relevant to law students, particularly because there's so many, how to call them, organizations now that pair law students with mentors. And I, as I said, benefited from mentors in the past, but there have been people that I've worked with, so it's like a natural thing. But when you have dedicated time with a mentor who you've never really met before, I think it's always great to know how to kind of present yourself and bring yourself to a meeting in order to get the best out of mentors. So thank you ever so much for sharing that. So I'm wondering if you could talk to us about one of your most memorable cases, the facts of the case, the outcome, and the impact it had on the law, and maybe your career as well. Over 37 years, I've had a lot of cases that made a difference, but the one that jumps out of mind was the first death penalty case that I ever handled, and it was very memorable for a number of reasons. One, the trial took 4 months. Two, my father passed away in the middle of it. And so some really difficult decisions had to be made about whether we went forward or, we mistried it. The kindness of everybody
during that period of time was really important. I mean, at the end of the day, my client was found guilty. He was not given the death penalty. We won that part of it, which made a big difference in my life. Not having somebody sitting on death row. It was such an all-encompassing case that, I think it made a big difference. I mean, I was 20, I guess I was about 31 or 32 when we tried that case. And so, I was still relatively, young. I'd been practicing for about 7 years at that point. It was a huge responsibility. That my client was, 25, and it was a big case. It got a lot of notoriety. The FBI was involved. There was just a lot of moving parts. But that made a big impact on my career. I mean, it was really the stepping stone of moving me to the next level of being a criminal defense lawyer.
I'm so sorry to hear about the passing of your father during that case. You mentioned as well that it lasted 4 months. Now, I'm quite new to, criminal law and the death penalty. So is 4 months a long time for a case of this kind to go on?
It sure felt like it. Every case is different. But jury selection took about a month. I've tried 2 death penalty cases, 2 jury, and both of them took about that amount of time. So I think that's a fairly common period of time, but it's a long haul. I mean, you're going constantly, you're working night and day for that entire period of time. It's so I don't know statistically if that would be about average, but they were the longest cases I ever tried.
At the moment, I'm writing a dissertation on the technicalities of how the UK could withdraw from the ECHR. And one of the things I'm looking into is just as a kind of a little bit of a comparison is Trinidad and Tobago when they withdrew from the ACHR, and looking at the reasons why they did it and wanted to implement the death penalty, and just reading up about that and seeing the effect it had on the people that were on death row, and how it was almost torture having such a long period on death row. It's something that I've never really thought about before, but you mentioned it seemed like a long time for you. God knows what it feels like for the people that are on death row, waiting for their trial. So,
well, I think the thing that people forget about and the major opposition that I have to the death penalty is the jury. So, imagine you're just, some person who gets the notice, you have to show up for jury duty. You wind up sitting for 4 months on a case where ultimately you have to decide if someone lives or dies. And the impact on that jury. I mean, when we finished, every one of those jurors was crying, was traumatized. I met with about half of them after, and it had a profound effect on every single one of them. I think the real question one has to ask is the vengeance of society, because that's all the death penalty is. It's just straight up revenge. Is the vengeance of society worth the torture that we put our citizens through to go through the process? And most people forget about the jury, but they're the ones who actually carry the burden. And I've never been opposed to the death penalty from the perspective of, does the state have the right to kill its citizens? Yeah, we send people to war, we do all kinds of things, but the impact that it has on the jury is so profound, and nobody ever talks about that. And that's really where my opposition most strongly lies, is that we should just never ask that of our citizens to do to another human being.
That's such an interesting point. Thank you so much for sharing that. So after doing, I've read that you have won 5 jury trials in a row, which is an exceptional record and highly unusual in the field of criminal defence. Can you tell us what your secret is and what sets apart the exceptional criminal defence attorneys from perhaps the more ordinary ones?
I would say that the biggest thing that has I would say the biggest thing is the jury selection process. So, what you have to consider is in many ways you get to pick your audience, and understanding that process and going through the process, which I think very few lawyers do, but is critical in my view, is understanding what kind of person you need to sit on that jury that would even consider voting not guilty for a child molest or a murder or whatever. What kind of person is that? Because that there's many people who have absolutely no problem convicting. So the question is, what is the population and what are the core beliefs that people have that would allow them to render a not guilty verdict? And so you have to actually think hard about that and explore that. And what we do is we build an avatar of what the perfect juror would look like. And then we try to find people who fit that criteria. And there's some stereotyping that you have to do. I mean, that's just part of the jury selection process. But to really give some thought, I think most lawyers just go in and pick whoever shows up and kind of go on a gut feeling, but they don't know what they're looking for. And we spend a lot of time strategizing who are we actually looking for, who would be our perfect juror, and then we do our best to find them. And I think that's a big reason why I've had a lot of success. I mean, last year, even though I had sold the firm, I stayed on because I had trials I had to finish, and I did 3 jury trials, won 2 of them, and I haven't matched 5 in a row again, but I've won a lot of trials, and it's because we pick jurors that will listen to what we had to say. So, as an example, one of the trials I did, my client shot this guy 9 times, and he was charged with attempted murder, and it was a self-defense. So every juror on that jury was a gun owner and belonged to the NRA. And so strongly believed, every one of them strongly believed in self-defense, the right to protect yourself. As opposed to if we'd allowed jurors on there who were opposed to guns and thought that nobody should ever carry a gun and that kind of thing, we'd have lost that trial. But because we knew exactly what we wanted, that was a pretty clear example. We wanted gun owners who believed in self-defense. And that's what we got. And my client went home.
It wasn't 50 Cent who your client shot, was it? He was shot 9 times.
It was not. One had to concede that the whole thing was a mess. I mean, none of it should have happened. Guns and drugs and alcohol never mix. But having said that, when this fellow pointed a gun at my client, he had the right to defend himself. And that was the issue, to prove that. But once we got over that hurdle and showed that, he did have a gun, the jury came back pretty quickly.
Yeah. So how can a person become skillful in selecting a jury? Is it something that they kind of teach you at law school? Are you just exceptionally good at it naturally? Can people take perhaps a, psychology degree or something?
Well, they absolutely don't teach that in law school. I think so. My advice to any law student or new lawyer or old lawyer, I don't care, if you're practicing law, you need to read all the time. You need to read as much as you possibly can, because, and I don't really care what you read. You can read Stephen King or Tom Clancy or self-help books. It doesn't matter. Learning about people and understanding how people react is a skill that you just develop over the course of your life if you are looking for that information. If you just are asking the question, well, how would this person react to that, to this particular scenario? And the more that you read, I think the more that you learn those skills. Now, there definitely are seminars and classes where people will teach specific skills about jury selection and give their opinions about it. And some of them are very good, and some of them, I felt were not worth the effort. But you don't know until you show up, until you go. And I went to lots of those kinds of seminars, and I talked to lots of people. But it's all about asking the right questions. The question that you want to be asking is, what core beliefs does someone have to render the verdict I want? And if you ask that question, your mind will start working on it and begin to come up with those ideas. And I think people just don't ask the right question enough. Because I think some lawyers think that, because they're articulate, they're going to cause someone to change their core beliefs. And that's the biggest mistake, right? Somebody comes in and, you think in a 45-minute argument, you're going to change their core beliefs. So you just don't understand how all this works. You want to work with their core beliefs. Instead of trying to change that, you want to work with, what do they already believe, and how can you use that to get them to where you want them to go? We see that in the politics around here all the time, right? I'm not here to change anybody's mind. I'm here to use what they already believe to my advantage.
That is so interesting, Michael. So essentially, just by reading, doesn't matter what it is, by reading books with different characters, you start to pick up these characters' different perspectives, and you can apply that later on in life, all walks of life, to see other people's points of view. I love that. It's very clever. Very clever.
Yeah, you need to just build your wealth of knowledge. Reading law books all day long is not particularly helpful. I haven't read a law book in decades, but just knowing about people, because what do we do as lawyers is we're trying to convince people to do what we want them to do, and that's about persuasion and setting things up. And that's, I did a podcast yesterday where the topic was storytelling. And at the end of the day, what do? We tell stories, and you need to learn how to tell a story. That's a key thing, whether you're trying to convince a judge of something or the opposing counsel or a jury. It's all about telling the story. Nobody cares about the legal stuff. What they care about is the story, because that's what touches you emotionally. Excellent. So storytelling is such a critical component. And the way you learn to tell stories is, one, to practice. You just practice. You just tell stories. Practice on your friends, practice on your family, get good at telling a story that people care about, and keep it short and keep it, to the point, and you will be much more persuasive. And that's really what we're talking about, is lawyers are about being persuasive.
Thank you ever so much for sharing that. I think that is fantastic advice. I think that law students are always looking always being taught to be concise, and it's just an absolute key takeaway, and it can help in arguments, construct arguments, and it can help with just presentation skills, and what you have just advised can help people draft emails as well. And I just think it's so applicable to your entire professional life and personal one as well, because you don't want to be boring your friends half to death as well when you're chatting away to them.
Well, what I always teach our new lawyers, in particular, is that there's two components to convincing someone. One is the how, the legal thing. Does the judge have the ability to do what you want to do, which is what most lawyers and law students spend all their time talking about. And there's the why. Why should they do it? And you, in my opinion, you should spend 80% of your time on the why and a minimal amount of time on the how. Nobody wants to read the legalese. Nobody's going to go back and look at the cases. Nobody cares about that. What they care about is, why should I do this?
Sure.
And if you spend and that's the storytelling. Why should I give this guy a break? Why should I let this guy go into a program? Why shouldn't I convict him? Why did he do what he did? The how matters. That's the law part. But, most lawyers and certainly most judges know the how. They know what the parameters of their discretion is. Then the question is, why should they do it? And that's where you want to spend your time.
I'd like to take a moment to speak about the University of Law, which is the university I decided to study my LPC at. The University of Law is the sponsor of this podcast and makes it possible for us to continue bringing these episodes to you. So we really appreciate you supporting us by supporting our sponsors. What really sets the University of Law apart from other universities is its belief in training students for the real world from the moment they accept a place. The University of Law's experienced career service and award-winning pro bono clinics offer students the chance to get real-life legal experience which can boost employability. They offer a range of undergraduate and postgraduate legal training and master's degrees designed by qualified experts to help students excel at any stage of their career. Their courses are employment-focused, honing key skills in a teaching environment based on real legal practice. Part-time and online study options are also available on many of their courses to help students work and study at the same time. If you'd like to find out more about the courses on offer, please click the link in the description box of the podcast.
What are your top tips for newly qualified attorneys when put on their first criminal arrest charge?
Well, so the first tip is you need to ask lots of questions. You need to try to figure out, why did your client... So if you come from the assumption that your client is a decent, good person who just, made a mistake or did something bad, and the question is, well, why? Why did they do something bad? Did they just go through a divorce? Did someone just die in their family and they're still in that grieving process, and so they're acting out? Alcohol, drugs, what changed in their lives? Because if you know that, so if your classic drunk driving, well, it's 99 times out of 100, it's an alcohol problem, right? So what's the solution to the problem? Get them sober, get them to AA or some sort of treatment. But you got to ask the question, because they're not going to come in and go, hey, I'm a drunk and that's why this happened. No, you've got to ask the questions, and you've got to dig down and find out really what happened so that you can help them, and you're developing their story so that when you go to the judge, you say, well, Judge, I mean, my client's daughter, died and he's still grieving and that's why he's drinking. And so what we've done is we've come up with a program where we're dealing with his grieving so that it'll address his drinking. And we don't need to hammer this guy and send him to jail or prison or whatever. We need to get him treatment. That's the story, right? That's a whole lot more compelling than, oh, Judge, we just shouldn't send him to jail. That doesn't convince anybody. Right. So asking the right questions, digging deep, not being afraid to ask the questions, and then developing the story, and focusing on the story. What is the story? What happened? Why did this occur? And is there a way that you can help them not repeat the incident?
So you have to kind of like humanize your client. Yeah.
Right. Because when the court calls it, it's, people versus John Smith.
Yeah.
Well, who's John Smith? Well, let me tell you who John Smith is. I'm going to tell you the story of John Smith. Yeah. And now it matters. And, I'll tell you, I've had more. One of the things I always love to do when I have the opportunity is if I can put a picture of my client with his family at Disneyland or someplace like that. Oh my goodness. Talk about humanizing somebody. Pictures help. There's a number of ways to do it, but you got to ask the right questions. That's the starting point. And then learn the skills of telling a good story.
So you've mentioned DUI charges and death penalty. You know, you work on a whole range of criminal defence matters. Which type of defence matters do you get the most job satisfaction from, and why is this?
Well, so one of the things that our firm does is we do record clearances. So in other words, someone gets in trouble, they've completed their period of probation or whatever, and then we go through and try to clean up their record. And for me, that's one of the most satisfying things is to really let the client put it behind them, you know, get their record cleaned up so that they don't have to, you know, talk about it on a jury or a job application. That's really one of the most satisfying things. I've had, you know, grown men just cry on my shoulder. They were so happy. You know, I tell clients this all the time. I said, don't let this one event define your life. You know, this is not the defining moment of your life. You screwed up and you made a mistake, but let's figure out a way to get around it. And that is kind of like putting the period at the end of the sentence. You know, this is over. This is completely and 100% over. And that's really, really satisfying.
It must be the biggest weight off of their shoulders, knowing that they can, you know, start at an absolute fresh with a blank slate. So yeah, I can see why that gives you a lot of job satisfaction. So you mentioned as well that you were with the Attorney General for 17 years. Have I got that correct?
Yeah, so I was with the public defender.
So you must have really enjoyed it. So why did you decide to establish your own law firm after 17 years?
Well, there were a couple of things that happened. The management of the public defender's office changed, and that had an impact on me. And the Bay Area, the San Francisco Bay Area, was going through a big change. It was going through in the early 2000, 1999, 2000, 2001. It was going through the .com boom, and the price of homes was crazy expensive.
Yeah.
And kids, traffic was just nutty. And so for quality of life, we decided to move to Sacramento, which didn't have a lot of those things going on. So it really was a quality of life move for us to get out of the Bay Area.
And why establish your own business, your own law firm, instead of moving, you know, to something else?
So I did originally start with a very prestigious firm. What I saw was I wanted to have more control over what I was doing and my income, and you know, there were a number of other factors. I didn't feel like I had much of a future with that firm. They weren't going to make me a partner, and I thought, you know, at that point I'd been practicing for 23 years, and I felt that I had earned that. So, you know, it was just kind of a clash of personalities. So that was really the big reason. I never had intended on running my own firm. That was not in the game plan ever. And I felt like I kind of got forced into it. But once I did, you know, and I struggled for several years. I mean, from the business perspective, because while I had great mentors in the law, I didn't have any business mentors. And it wasn't until I really began to invest time and money in business mentors and actually learn how to run a business. We went from a struggling firm that, you know, I wasn't quite sure how to pay the rent to doing better than seven figures a year in gross revenue, and ultimately put it in a position where I could sell it.
Yeah.
And that's given me the ability to, you know, new chapter and different things.
That's fantastic. Well, massive congratulations for everything that you've accomplished. I know how difficult it can be to take on something that is incredibly challenging and not being scared of it, and, you know, really going for it and succeeding. So, I mean, it does take a lot of hard work and a lot of dedication, but, you know, it just goes to show, if you do want something badly enough, and put the work in as well, you know, you can achieve just fantastic things, and you are a clear example of that. So, you know, Thank you for being such an inspiration and I suppose motivation as well to so many other people.
Well, thank you for saying that.
So apart from being exceptionally good at the law, how do you build your professional reputation to win and retain business?
That's the $1 million question for most people. I think one is you have to treat your clients really well. So you build a referral source. And what that really means is thinking through the entire client experience from the moment that they call your firm or walk into your office. What do they see? What do they feel? What do they smell? To really think through that experience so that it's the best experience that you can give them. They feel, I've been in lawyers' offices where, it's kind of dank and dark and there's nothing on the walls and it kind of smells musty. And it's like, do I really want to let this guy, have an impact on my life? Our office, we really think through everything every plaque, every picture, everything that's on the wall. We use scented candles so that it has that, that pleasant smell. So when you show up, you're feeling confident that you're in the right place. The biggest complaint to the state bar is always failure to communicate with your client. So have a regular communication with your client, being open and available to them. That doesn't mean that every time they call, you pick up the phone. That's a different thing. But that you're responsive. When they send you a message or when they call and leave a message, you get back to them in a timely manner with real information. You tell people what's going to happen before it happens, so that they know what to expect. People hate uncertainty. So you do your best to avoid that as much. So that, that's part of it. Marketing is a very challenging thing. Everybody's, sending you emails saying, I can put you on the first page of Google and all of that, and you can spend a fortune and waste your money. The other thing that's so critical is that you have to track the data of your firm. You need to know the numbers. You need to know how many leads are coming in, how many are qualified leads, how many are setting appointments, how many are showing, how many are hiring. You need to track all of that because that gives you, and where are those leads coming from? So you know how you're spending your money. And is that lead source actually delivering? People will tell you, and they'll give you statistics. Oh, look, your website's getting all these hits. Yeah, well, when you dig down, you go, well, these are all bots from Russia. Those aren't leads. I don't care how many hits my website gets. What I care about is how many people are actually contacting us. So, having that data, and we have a ton of that. How you're spending your money, where you're spending it. Are you saving money? You always need to learn how to save money. And what this all comes back to is if you are worried about paying the rent, you are not focused on your clients. So you need to build your business because the practice of law is simply a business that provides legal services. These guys say, I own a law firm. I'm like, well, I own a business that provides legal services. And I'm profitable. How about you? Because most law firms aren't profitable if they're not businesses, if they're not run like a business. So you got to run it like a business, and you got to have profit at the end of the day, and you got to have money set aside for those months that are bad. COVID really impacted our industry like every other industry, right? Fortunately, we had a bunch of money stuck away for that rainy day. We didn't know what it was going to be, but we did not have to incur any debt.
Excellent.
Yeah, I know so many firms who wound up running their firm based on a credit card, and now they have to pay it off.
Yeah,
we never had to pay it off, right? We had the money
with these crazy interest rates.
Right. Well, yeah, and I understood that that's the way business works. You have good months, you have bad months. It's a roller coaster. It's not a straight road. Even though brand has been very, very good for our firm for many years. But any given month, it's up and it's down, it's up and it's down. That's the way the line always goes. So,
yeah.
So those would be the big things.
I think that everything that you have just mentioned is such fantastic advice that I'm sure that people will be able to keep with them for, throughout their entire career, and will help them, win business, retain business throughout their whole career. So thank you ever so much for sharing. Now, you are recognized as being one of Sacramento's top criminal attorneys, founder of your own law firm, published author. How do you ensure that you are putting or able to put 100% into everything that you do to make sure that, you're performing to the best of your ability, and avoid burnout? I mean, is it possible?
Well, it's absolutely possible. I mean, that the book I wrote, LegalEase, The Ultimate Guide on How to Survive a Law Practice, is all about that. That's, you have to take care of yourself. You have to get enough sleep. You have to get exercise. You have to, fuel your body, so eat good food. I mean, if you're just eating junk all day long, you're not going to perform at your best. You need to learn how to avoid distractions. So, I mean, if you look at my office, you will not see my cell phone. Biggest mistake people make is they got their cell phone sitting on their desk. Why? Why do you have your cell phone sitting on your desk? Because it is simply a distraction. It was built to be a distraction. So minimizing your distraction so you can be focused, and the myth of multitasking is one of the great lies of our generation. Nobody multitasks. You cannot multitask. Your brain does what your brain does is it task switches. So you jump from one to the other, and you think you're doing two things at the same time, but you're not. So to minimize that, do one thing at a time, do it well, and then move on to the next project. And so, and what that's all about is learning to control your cell phone, learning to control your email, learning to control all the tools that you have to work with, but don't have them control you. Email, everybody thinks that email requires a response immediately. Why? For what possible reason? I only look at my email once a day, and I've been doing that for years. And I've taught people that Mike only looks at his email once a day. So if you think you're going to get an immediate response, you're going to be very disappointed. And people just learn, don't send me something that needs to be responded to immediately. If you call me and say, hey, I'm going to send you an email, this contract needs to be signed right away. Okay, that's fine. But just to send me something randomly, I'll get to it when I get to it. So you prioritize yourself, and don't let your day or your practice or your business be run by somebody else who just happens to have your email address.
Yeah, I agree with what you're saying. I'm a big fan of the Pomodoro Technique. So I'll be working on my computer. I'll have YouTube up and I'll play it, and it will run to 15 minutes, and then for 10 minutes I'll take a break. I might look at my phone then. But as well, you're talking about not responding to email straight away. I apply that to my WhatsApp messages as well. I just said that I look at my phone maybe once an hour. If I read a WhatsApp message, sometimes I don't reply straight away. And I've taken, you can have the blue ticks to show that you've read it. I've taken that off because as we were just talking about, I don't need to reply straight away, or sometimes I don't have the time. And it just, by not showing the status of that, I don't feel as anxious about getting back to somebody straight away. Why should somebody feel anxious about, replying a message straight away? But anyway, by removing it, it just, removes that kind of like probably need to reply straight away. So yeah, I agree with what you're saying, and highly recommend to our listeners to, be kind to yourself and take that advice on board. And if you can, change settings on your computer, on your phone, to stop all these notifications, these push notifications coming through, to have a little bit more peace of mind, then yes, I do recommend doing that. Absolutely.
Yeah, you should turn all the notifications off. It's again, this is about prioritizing yourself. recognizing that you are just not at the beck and call of everybody who happens to have your WhatsApp address or your email address. You control your day. And if you keep looking at it, whether you respond or not, you're letting somebody else control your day. So, I think the Pomodoro approach is a great starting point. But I'd encourage you to use that 10 minutes and go for a walk as opposed to looking at your cell phone. And then, do your cell phone like once or twice a day. I mean, it's a tool, and treat it like a tool as opposed to, and it's harder for your generation. I mean, I grew up without cell phones, right? So for me, I've been seriously considering going back to just an old dumb flip phone, because it annoys me actually to get all of this stuff. But businesses run that way, and I get it. So I can't not have.
You are completely right. I mean, I don't need to look at my phone, every 50 minutes, and I could revert to, one of those really old Nokia 3210s. I don't know if that's what you've got over there as well, what you used to use. But the thing that turns me off that is how you have to press like one of the buttons 3 times to get just one letter. So the Nokia 3210 is a no for me, but I will take your advice on board and go for a little walk, or just even stand outside to get some fresh air, because I'm sure that will give me a bit of a refresh and help me, become a bit more focused again. Absolutely, definitely. Yeah. Although unfortunately we haven't got nice weather over here, or nice as weather as you do. So yeah, perhaps I'll hold off until the summer for that walk. But yeah, a peer out the window might just do me good.
Yeah, well, it was 18 degrees when I got up this morning, so you just have to learn how to deal with the cold. That's what it's
for. So, do you have top tips for passing the California bar?
I mean, the bar's changed a lot. When I took it, it was 3 days. Now it's only 2 days. They've lowered the score. But what I would say is treat studying for the bar like a job. I would get up in the morning. I would be at my desk at 9 o'clock. I would study until noon, and then I'd go play basketball for a couple hours, have lunch, and then study for a few more hours. So I treated it like a job. It was incredibly important that I passed because I had no other source of income, so I needed that. But I think that's it. Improve your test taking skills. There's lots of courses that teach you how to take the multi-state and how to take a multiple choice test to be more effective, even if you don't know the answer. Typically you can get rid of 2 of the answers, and then you're left with a 50-50 chance. So, there's techniques, but, it's been 37 years since I took a bar exam. So, and I have no intention of taking another one.
Very good. So I think that, just putting in the hard work and, not trying to cut corners will get you there in the end, putting in that hard work and dedication.
I would say this: when it comes time to take the test, don't cram at the end of the day. Don't study in the middle of the test. Get sleep. Be well rested. Sleep is the secret weapon to peak performance. If you are getting consistently good sleep, that your body needs, you will perform way better than if you're cramming all night. Study well in advance. Learn the stuff, and then take, what I did is I took 2 days off before the bar exam, and I didn't even open a book. I just, enjoyed myself and rested and ate well. So when I hit the ground running, as they say, it used to be 3 days. It was an endurance event. And I watched a lot of my colleagues just disintegrate on day 3. They just fell apart.
I think that you're really sensible. I mean, I've listened to a lot of neuroscience podcasts about enhancing your cognitive powers. And when you clearly it's not working for me because I can't remember the name of the science. But they talk about, when you're revising, when you're studying something, it's not until you stop and put it away and go to sleep when your brain is like breaking it all down, and you're learning it then. So very sensible getting that restful sleep before the exam, and it's definitely something that I try to do as well. Before
I talk a lot about that in my book, LegalEase, the ultimate guide on how to survive a law practice. I have 3 spots in here where I talk about the importance of sleep, because, as I say, it's the secret weapon to peak performance. And most lawyers that I know just think it's, sleep's optional, but sleep is not optional. Not if you want to perform at your top, at your best.
Yeah. For our listeners, I'm going to put links to Michael's book in the show notes. So if you want to check those out or purchase them, the links will be there for you to access that. So we're approaching towards the end of the interview now. So Mike, I've just got a couple of questions to ask you, or a couple of questions remaining. What has been the highlights of your working week? Although, scratch that, I will just say I wrote these questions probably at the end of a week. Today is Tuesday. So, Mike, perhaps you could let us know what the highlight of your working week was last week.
I'm not sure you would categorize the highlight, but what I do on Friday mornings is I plan my next week. And I do that for 2 reasons. One, I want to control my day. So I plan my week in advance of all the, the big rocks that have to be done, meetings, podcasts, whatever it is. I also include in there my exercise program, what I'm going to do to the extent that when I'm going to do it. But I do that for 2 reasons. One, controlling your week. But the other is that if you do it on Friday morning and you have to review your past week, how did that go? And if you find that you forgot to do something or you failed to get something done, you still have time to fix it, right? You still got Friday, Saturday, and Sunday to fix it. If you wait till Monday morning to plan your week, well, you can't fix what you miss. So that's, to me, that's kind of a highlight, is planning my week. And because I get to be creative, I get to decide. I got 24 hours in a day. I can put these things whenever I want. For the most part.
Yeah.
And, when am I going to play my guitar? When am I going to meet up with my friends? When am I going to go for a bike ride? When am I going to have these various things? And so I plan that out. And then the key is that I honor that. If I said, 2:00 on Wednesday afternoon, I'm going to go for a bike ride, I honor that. Unless something really earth-shattering comes up, which rarely happens, I'm going to honor my commitment to myself. And I think this is all part about what I'm saying about prioritizing yourself, prioritizing what you need to do to perform it at your very best.
Yeah, excellent. And it sounds like you are very organized as well, which I think is a great skill for a lawyer to have. Now, I'm always so interested to learn how people do create a schedule, because I've tried multiple things, writing one down, having it on the computer. Sometimes I've had both. How do you plan? What apps or tools do you use?
Well, I have an online calendar because other people need to have access to that. And, so I can have the link to the podcast or the meeting or whatever. But primarily I use a journal and I just handwrite it in. I put in on this corner what are the time events. So a particular time, I put in the one big thing that I need to get done that day. So the book, The One Thing, I highly recommend that. What is the one thing, if I got it done today, I would call this a successful day. And then I leave room for, other things that I'm going to squeeze in during the course of the day. So like I have to set up a schedule for training for one of our new employees. So I like the paper. I think that there's a lot of and there is some science behind, actually handwriting as opposed to typing and that kind of thing. But my journal I use for basically everything. I record everything that happens, and I put all of that stuff in there. So that's the method that I've used, and I've used a lot of different things over the years. What I would say is that come up with a method that you like, and don't be afraid to change it as time changes. So that's how I do it.
Fantastic. Thank you for sharing that. So final question, what advice would you give to your younger self?
Money management. My dad told me about that. I ignored him. There's a great book called The Richest Man in Babylon, written in, I think, 1939. It's about saving, a percentage of every dollar that comes in. If I'd have done that, I'd have, my financial situation would be even better. I mean, right now, I started to employ that, but I employed it late. The compounding effect of saving money and investing it and letting it work for you, I think that would be the one piece of advice I got. So I have to say, my dad told me, I just never listened. So.
Well, thank you so much for sharing that. I will definitely take that piece of advice on board. And when you were talking about collecting data this a bit earlier in the podcast, I think that is a fantastic thing to do when you are looking after your finances, looking at your bank balance every day to see what you're spending and where it's going, I think is a fantastic way to ensure that you are, taking care of your money. So yes, collecting data, top tip there as well, that you gave earlier on in the podcast. So as I said, I have come to the end of my question. So there is only really one thing left for me to say, which is thank you so much for coming on the show. It has been an absolute pleasure talking to you, and you have provided such, incredible advice about studying, careers, skills throughout the entire episode. So yeah, thank you so much for sharing all of that.
Well, you're very welcome, and I'd be happy to come back anytime. I feel like one of my missions now is to help other people not struggle as much as I did, and I've been doing this for a long time, so I've learned a lot.
Excellent.
So thank you for the opportunity.
Oh no, the pleasure is all ours, absolutely. And please do come back whenever you are free. So for our listeners, it's the week of Thanksgiving. Michael, are you doing anything nice on Thursday?
We're just having some friends over, and then I'm going to go and actually drive from here to San Diego to pick up my grandson, and he's going to spend a couple weeks with us. So that's kind of my holiday.
Excellent. Well, we're very thankful for you for coming on the show today. And thank you for our listeners for tuning into another episode of the Student Lawyer Podcast, and we'll see you back again here next time. To hear more of the Student Lawyers Podcast, hit the subscribe button and leave us a star rating and review. If you would like to join the Student Lawyer as a writer, please email hello@thestudentlawyer.com.